So, I want to talk about the three biggest mistakes I see people making with their run training. And so, this is the one that's really close to my heart. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he's building up for a marathon, and he was telling me that he's made basically all three of these mistakes that we're going to talk about today. That's really what's prompted this discussion. So, the first big mistake that I see runners making, or that I see triathletes who are training for long distance triathlon making in their run training, let's put it that way, because it's different for triathletes and runners. The biggest mistake that I see triathletes making in their run training is trying to do too much fast or hard running within their training. And I really believe that a big part of this comes down to the background of runners and running clubs and how running clubs train. The number one way that you're going to improve your running is consistency of running and getting out there more often. It's not going to be the speed work sessions that everyone thinks are going to be the thing. They're really just the icing on the cake. To make the cake itself, you need to be out there running and you need to be doing consistent, frequent runs at a pace that you can keep up, at a pace that doesn't make you at risk from getting injuries or niggles. And that's the biggest disconnect, if you like, that I see between the way people think they need to train and the way that they actually need to train. So, the biggest risk that you're going to put yourself in terms of messing up your run training for a long distance triathlon is picking up any kind of niggle or injury or anything that's going to get in the way of your consistency. If you can be a consistent runner, if you can run day in, day out, if you can ideally run 3 or 4 times a week, and at the end of every run, you're actually ready to train again the next day, that's the best kind of training that you can do as a long distance triathlete. The risk, I think, comes in where people go and train with running clubs, people go and train with people who are from a running background. And the tendency, I think, is to look for a hack or to look for a shortcut or to look for what people call what's the quality session here. As a triathlete, I'm only running 3 or 4 times a week, and these runners are running 6 or 7 times a week. So what can I cut out, and what can I take from them as a secret? And it seems to me that an awful lot of people think that it's the hard runs, the fast runs, the track sessions, the hill rep sessions. They're the ones that they should take from the running club's armory, if you like, and they should skip the easy runs, the steady runs, the longer runs, and put those on one side. And I'm here to say to you that it's the exact opposite that's true. It's the easy runs, the consistent run. They're the thing that's going to build durability in your body, and that's going to allow you to build the ability to do more training in the future. That's ultimately what's going to bring you success as a triathlete at the long distance. Fast running, hard running, track runs, hill runs, any kind of thing that involves intervals, reps going really hard. I said to this friend of mine, track sessions are essentially 20 minutes of hope and 40 minutes of reality and then an hour at the physiotherapist. And there was a tongue in cheek as I said this, but it's true in an awful lot of cases, especially if you're into middle age, if you're 45, 50 plus years old. Any kind of fast or hard running is the number one thing that it is a threat to your long-term running ability, because if you pick up sore calves, sore soleus muscles, sore hamstrings, and that means you have to miss, who knows, 1 run, 3 runs, 6 runs out of your run training, you have to wonder how much actual long-term benefit that very small extra amount of training stimulus at the higher intensity has given you, compared to if you'd managed to do another 3 or 6 or 9 consistent steady runs. So that's the number one tip I would give you, to avoid a large amount of the harder or the faster running in your training and really try and reduce or minimize or limit anything that's going to threaten your ability to train on a day to day, week to week basis. The second big mistake that I see triathletes making is doing all of their runs continuously, especially their longest run. And I can understand why people make this mistake, because at the end of the day, if we talk to a friend who's not really into triathlon or running and you tell them you're going to run a marathon, one of the really common things people say to you is, are you going to run the whole marathon without stopping? Are you going to run the whole marathon in your Ironman without stopping, or the whole half marathon in your half Ironman without stopping. And it can be very tempting to the ego to want to be the person who can answer yes to that. And actually, that's not the real question. The real question is, have you performed as best as you possibly could on race day and got yourself from the start of the swim to the end of the run in the fastest possible time that you could have done? It's irrelevant whether you take a walk break. And if you watch many of our videos or podcasts, you'll know that we use walk breaks as a planned way to actually get you to the finish line faster than if you try and do the whole thing as a continuous run. So in training, I recommend all our athletes, their long run of the week is done as a 9-1 run walk ratio. So 9 minutes of running, 1 minute of walking. And what do I mean by long run? Well, it's whatever you consider long relative to your training at the moment, or anything at 60 minutes and above. So if you're just starting out and you're running 15 minutes in a session, if your longer run is 20 minutes or 25 minutes, then that's your long run for the week. Break this up into the 9-1 run walk method. If you're running further than that and your long run is 60 minutes, 75, 90, or even longer, break that run up into 9-1 run walk. It's going to have two big benefits. The first big benefit is you will not get anywhere near as sore and tired the day after your long run as you're expecting to. And typically, athletes find that the first time they try the run walk method, they can run for about double the duration of the long run they were expecting to be able to. So, if you can currently do an hour as your long run, you could probably do 2 hours as a 9-1 run walk tomorrow. And I understand that it sounds magical and fantastical, and really, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just encourage you to try the 9-1 run walk method. See how you feel the day after that long run. Because again, success in long distance triathlon comes from being able to string back to back, day after day training sessions, not get too tired, not get too sore, to be able to train the next day again. This walk break that you take in the long runs is an amazing way of really reducing the amount of soreness and the amount of fatigue you feel the day after that long run. So I really encourage everyone to try this. I mentioned again, there's a second part to this. What you'll find is actually during the run as well as minimizing the amount of soreness and the amount of fatigue you've got the next day, it also manages to make the run feel much more comfortable actually during the run itself. So whereas a long run of, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours can feel like a really, really long time. And that can play into your mind as you're running and make you think, I might not actually make this entire run. If all you've got to do is run until the end of this 9 minute section, and then you know that you get a walk break at the end of it, that's really positively motivating. And you can get yourself in a very positive mental spiral thinking, I actually only have to get to the end of this 9 minute section and then I get a walk break again. And there's something happens mentally with every single athlete that we've worked with. They're amazed how much easier it is to get through, if you like, 12 runs of 9 minutes rather than a 2 hour long run. It just breaks it up into chunks that the mind seems to find much, much easier to digest. And again, come race day in a long distance triathlon or even in a marathon, there's going to be aid stations out there. You are going to have to go through the aid station, get a drink, take on calories, take on electrolytes. And it's really hard to do that while you're running, certainly without spilling it all over yourself. So having that walk break as you go through an aid station on race day is going to be part of your strategy. So it works both ways. It's part of a way to build that into your training session as well. Now, the third mistake that I see triathletes making in their run training is wanting to do run races too often. And it's understandable. There's a part of our mind and a part of our ego says, I will only believe that I'm getting fitter if I see that I'm getting fitter in a race situation. And the traditional way of seeing if you've got fitter is entering a 5K, entering a 10K, entering a half marathon. And those of you who've been in running clubs or who've got friends in running clubs will know runners are entering races pretty much every week, and sometimes 2 races or maybe even 3 races a week during the summer season because there are so many on and people want to take advantage of doing those. I'm going to say to you again that the way to think about this is in the light of the first two things that we've said, the first two mistakes we've mentioned in this episode already. The thing that's going to get in the way of you making the biggest long term progress is if you have um, illness, if you have injury, if you have niggles, anything that threatens your ability to do things consistently. And racing frequently is going to be one of those things. The day after a race, people are going to feel at best really fatigued and probably really sore as well. And that soreness is going to have a knock on effect for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, maybe even up to 4 days worth of training afterwards. And so it actually has a net negative effect. Even if you have a great race, even if it goes really well and you come out of it full of confidence, it has a net negative on the fact that you can't really do any significant, meaningful run training for the next 3 or 4 days. But we understand the need that the mind and the ego has to see that you're making progress. So, what I'm going to suggest to you is if you need to do a fitness test and measure your fitness, do a fitness test, but don't do it at the very top end. And by its definition, a race is pushing yourself as hard as you can for the duration and distance of that race. The run test that we do with our athletes is a sub-maximal run test. So typically we'll do that over 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll cap the run pace at a sub-maximal pace. So for the sake of argument, those of you who know Jack Daniels' VDOT calculator, we use M pace from that, or marathon race pace. And running that for 30 to 45 minutes in training it feels like a significant tempo run. It's a big effort to do it on your own in training, but you'll be fully recovered the next day by the time you're ready to train again. We have athletes measure their heart rate as they do this run test. And so what we get at the end of it is we know we've run for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. We know the pace that we've run at. We know the heart rate that we ended up running at when we analyze the results afterwards. And then if you want to do the test again in 6 weeks' time or 8 weeks' time, you can go back to the same course. You can try and make as many of the conditions similar as they were before in terms of time of day, temperature, weather conditions as much as you can. And then go out and run the same pace and see what your heart rate has done. And in almost all cases, we see with our athletes that across a block of time, if we look at 3 or 4, 6 to 8 week blocks, gradually the heart rate will get lower for the same given pace across that time. And that's the way that your mind and your ego get to see, yes, I am making progress. I am getting fitter. My heart rate is lower at the same pace it was 6 weeks, 12 weeks ago. And that's evidence to me that I'm getting faster and I'm getting fitter without the need to push yourself to the very top end, without the risks that pushing yourself at very top end racing brings with it. So that way you can be really sure and really clear that you're making progress without needing to put yourself at risk of an injury or excessive fatigue. Okay, I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. To wrap things up, here are some discount codes and deals for you. At precisionfuelandhydration.com, you can use the code OXYGEN24 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. You can also use their free fuel and hydration planning tool to receive a personalized strategy for your next race. Their planner will help you understand your own carbohydrate, electrolyte, and fluid needs so you can refine your strategy during training. And don't forget, you can even book a free one-to-one video consultation with PF&H's athlete support team, and they'll be happy to help you nail your race nutrition plan, and it'll help you perform at your best on race day. And also over at teamoxygenaddict.com, we've got the most comprehensive triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers. You can check out the details of our coaching on our website. And if it sounds good, please book a call with us and see if you'd be a good fit for joining the team. Let's see how we can best help you achieve your triathlon goals for the coming season. So remember, there's links in the show notes. You don't have to remember them. Until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict podcast.